Do you remember where you were when they first announced the sequel trilogy? That first Force Awakens trailer, the Falcon roaring over the desert.
There are stories about what happened.
Han saying Chewie, we're home. It was the first time Star Wars had been on the big screen since 2005, and the fandom just lit up. We're about to go through that again, but this time for something completely different. Everyone's focused on the Mandalorian and Grogu making a jump to cinemas, and yeah, that's gonna be a fun ride. But I actually think the movie that really changes Star Wars is the one that's coming right after it, Star Wars Starfighter. In this video, I want to break down what we know so far, how Shawn Levy is coming straight off of Stranger Things to basically launch a fresh new era for the franchise, and why Starfighter might be the first film since 1977 that truly feels like a new starting point, rather than another continuation of the Skywalker saga.
There's been no one for so long. Who are you?
Before we jump in, if you enjoy deep dives into this kind of thing and you want to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to Star Wars Starfighter, make sure you subscribe, drop a like on the video, and leave some high points too. It's massively appreciated. Now, with all out of the way, let's talk about why this movie could be the one that really turns the page for Star Wars. Alright, so ever since the sequel trilogy wrapped up with 2019's Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars on the big screen has basically been on pause. We've been living in a Disney Plus era instead, bouncing between shows that have had very different levels of success, and it's meant the event movie feeling has kind of drifted away. That finally changes in May 2026 when The Mandalorian and Grogu hits cinemas, taking Din and his little Mandalorian apprentice from the couch to the cinema screen. We've talked about that movie a lot on the channel already, and we're going to keep covering it right up until release because, well, it looks like a really fun adventure. But that's not the only film Lucasfilm is lining up. Just over the horizon, there's another one that's gathering momentum, and that's Star Wars Starfighter. It was announced at Star Wars Celebration Japan in April 2025, and that's where we found out Ryan Gosling is co-leading the movie. On top of that, it's been directed and produced by Shawn Levy, a name you might not instantly recognise, but you definitely know his work. He's been one of the key architects of Stranger Things from day one, serving as an executive producer and directing a bunch of the most memorable episodes. Right now, while Starfighter is still filming, he's dividing his time between that and the big marketing push for Season 5, where he likely directed several of the final chapters. So he's literally walking out of one massive cultural phenomenon and into another one. And what makes this exciting is Stranger Things has always worn its love for Star Wars on its sleeve. You've got the Death Star sound alarm buried in the audio design, constant nods to the originals, prequels, and even the sequels, and a tone that mixes big emotional swings with pulpy, crowd-pleasing fun. Levy's been living in that Star Wars-influenced sandbox for almost a decade now, helping craft a show that constantly tips its hat to a galaxy far, far away. And even another one of his movies, The Adam Project, basically had lightsabers. But yeah, now he's bringing that same emotionally big, nostalgic, but character-driven sensibility into a full-blown Star Wars theatrical movie. The question is, what does a guy who spent years paying homage to Star Wars actually do when he's allowed to make one? Now, the first big thing to understand is that Starfighter isn't a sequel or a prequel. It's set 5 years after the Rise of Skywalker, but it isn't going to be episode 10. It's not directly continuing Rey's story, and there's nothing in the timeline sitting in front of it yet. This is being built as a new self-contained Star Wars story centered almost entirely on new characters with their own corner of the map, their own conflicts, and their own stakes. The best way to think about this is a post-sequel trilogy version of Rogue One, a movie that stands on its own perfectly well, but also has the ability to reshape what we think about this era, especially if it lands the right way. And once you see who Gosling's character is traveling with and what kind of mission they're on, it starts to feel less like just another spin-off, and more like the point where Star Wars quietly turns the page into its next chapter. Now, on top of Ryan Gosling headlining the movie, the really interesting wrinkle is that he's not doing this alone. From what's been reported, the co-lead is a teenage boy who also happens to be his character's nephew. Straight away, this gives you that built-in mentor guardianship dynamic, where Gosling isn't just some hotshot pilot doing cool maneuvers. He's responsible for taking this kid from one side of the galaxy to the other, because the boy's mum, played by Amy Adams, has tasked him to do it. And the whole time they've got the film's antagonists closing in, which instantly makes it feel more intimate and personal than a standard Save the Galaxy plot. It's one thing to risk your life in a dogfight, it's another to have your family literally strapped in the seat behind you. And yeah, the time period they're actually traveling is just as important as who they are. The First Order has already fallen by this point, but the galaxy hasn't magically reset to peace and harmony. We're currently in that messy rebuilding area, very similar to the space that the Mandalorian's currently in, where the New Republic is trying to reassert control while the Imperial Remnant is licking its wounds, regrouping in the shadows and waiting for its moment.
Thrawn's return will herald in the re-emergence of our military.
In between those two extremes, you've got local systems, warlords, startup factions, all vying for power in this vacuum that's been created. And to be fair, it is the perfect playground for ace pilots, smugglers, and new players to actually collide. But the big question is, do they make these new villains the First Order 2.0, or do they lean into something much darker, more mysterious, like pirates, cults, or even a new militarized regime that's decided it's their time to grab power? But yeah, my money is on Starfighter taking us into a new corner of the galaxy we haven't really explored before, somewhere on the fringe, where a new conflict is just starting to bubble up and nobody's paying attention until it's almost too late. That puts Gosling's pilot and his nephew right on the front line, not as chosen ones in any kind of prophecy, but as two people trying to survive a run that's turned out to be way more dangerous than they anticipated. And if they pull it off, this might be the moment that quietly shapes what the future of Star Wars looks like beyond the Skywalkers. But yeah, here's where Starfighter really starts to get interesting. Everything we've spoken about so far doesn't sound like anything we've had before in the Skywalker saga, and that's kind of the point. This isn't being set up as Star Wars Episode 10. This isn't Rey 2.0. It's not a direct continuation of the Skywalker saga, and honestly, that's why I think it's standing out so much already. It's dropping in the same year as the 50th anniversary of A New Hope, and instead of just wheeling out the greatest hits,
we're not sure how to describe a weapon of this scale.
It's another Death Star.
It feels like Lucasfilm are trying to honour what the original film did by doing for this generation what George did back in '77. Tell a story that can stand on its own but still crack the door open to something bigger. You see, originally George imagined the entire story as one massive epic, but he had to carve out a slice and focus on that. A New Hope had to work as a complete story, a clear beginning, a middle and an end, because to be honest, he had no idea if he was going to get the opportunity to work on the others. That first movie is self-contained, but you can feel all the untold history behind Obi-Wan, Vader, the Clone Wars.
I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father.
It hints at a massive galaxy without spelling everything out. The question now is, can Starfighter recreate that for a completely new era? Can it give us a story that feels complete while still making you go, okay, I need to see what happens next in this part of the timeline? And so yeah, from everything we've heard, that's exactly how Lucasfilm are treating it. Internally, it's been approached as a standalone movie with a clear arc for these new characters. If it does well, you can bet there are already ideas on the table for where they could take it next.
You will go to the Dagobah system.
Dagobah system.
But the priority is to make this first film feel satisfying on its own, and that extends to the cast. Shawn Levy's first instinct was to apparently introduce more familiar faces to anchor the story. But Lucasfilm actually nudged him away from that and told him to focus on building new heroes, new villains, and new corners of the map. Any legacy characters that pop up are more like a seasoning than the main dish. And that alone is a pretty big statement. Instead of using nostalgia as a crutch, they're trying to make you care about people you've never met before.
You think anybody's listening?
What happens if Starfighter actually lands at? Do we get a corner of the galaxy in the post-sequel timeline that doesn't rely on what came before? Now, that doesn't mean they're totally closing the door on surprises. Back when A New Hope came out, nobody thought of Ben Kenobi as a legacy character. He was just this mysterious old war hero mentoring Luke. It's only with hindsight that he becomes this huge pillar of the franchise. Starfighter is coming out after 50 years worth of stories, which means if you introduce a war hero into the story, especially one with even a hint of Jedi about them, fans are instantly going to start asking, okay, who are they really?
It's a Quati Signet, Blue Kyber, Skystone, the ancient world.
And that's where it gets fun, because the way they've spoken about legacy characters so far makes it sound like there could be one waiting in the wings, but not front and center on the poster. Could this movie quietly introduce a figure that ends up defining this whole new era, the way Obi-Wan did for the original movie? We'll get into the Jedi side of things and the wilder theories around that in a bit. But for now, just know that Starfighter isn't trying to be episode 10, it's trying to very much be a new beginning. So yeah, when the sequel trilogy got announced, that was very much pitched as a soft reboot. New story, new faces, but still plugged directly into what came before. And the big hook at the time was, we've never been this fast forward in the timeline, we don't know how any of this ends. Starfighter is stepping into that exact kind of space, but it's doing it in a slightly different way. You can argue that this is the first Star Wars since 1977 that doesn't have to worry about continuing someone else's story. It's the new furthest point in a timeline, but instead of asking, What happens to the OT characters next? It's asking, okay, what does the galaxy actually look like when you move past what came before? And from everything we've heard, the default setting on this movie is very much new story first, cameos if they actually help.
How'd you find us?
That's the opposite of starting with, alright, what legacy character can we wheel out? And then reverse engineering a plot around them. And that alone changes the kind of hype you can feel building around it. The anticipation isn't who's going to show up so much as who are these people and why do they matter? What happens if the first big Star Wars movie back on the big screen that really connects with people isn't one that leans on the old guard, but one that makes you fall in love with an entirely new set of heroes at the furthest age of the story we've ever seen? And yeah, it really helps that Starfighter's already giving off that proper event movie energy. You can feel it in the way that people talk about it, despite no one seeing a single frame of footage yet. And even the way the casting announcement a couple of weeks ago turned into like a mini moment of its own. It's that feeling we had with The Force Awakens, where the smallest news nugget almost turned into a cultural event. But this time it isn't selling Star Wars is back, it's selling Star Wars is going somewhere else. Instead of trying to recapture being 10 years old again, it kind of acknowledges that we've grown up with this franchise. We've been through highs, lows, discoursed a lot. And now it might finally be ready to start a genuinely new chapter. And so yeah, we've got The Mandalorian and Grogu hitting first in May 26, and that's going to be a massive deal. But in terms of what really feels like the next big cinematic starting point, for me it's Starfighter that has the weight behind it. This is the one that could define what Star Wars looks like for the next decade. And if you're a kid whose first theatrical Star Wars isn't Luke, Rey, or these days Din, but whatever this crazy ace pilot and his nephew are about to get wrapped up in, this might quietly become your version of A New Hope. Anyways, this is where things really start to click in place for me. We've got Ryan Gosling playing this ace Starfighter pilot, right? He's not just flying cool missions for the sake of it. His whole point in this story is to deliver this kid from one point of the galaxy to the other, while someone is trying to blow him out of the sky. So the obvious question is, why do they want to stop one teenage boy from reaching his destination? My read is that this boy is force sensitive, and that his mum probably is too. And then you look at the casting, and you've got Amy Adams in there, and a lot of fans looked at her and thought, hang on a minute, this is basically what a live-action Mara Jade should actually look like. On top of that, the age lines up, and the vibe lines up too. And suddenly you're not just looking at a random new character, you're asking, could this kid actually be a Skywalker? And if he is, how much danger is he in during this point in the timeline and in this galaxy?
Because I was Luke Skywalker, Jedi Master.
Like, imagine if he and his mother were never at Luke's temple the night it fell. He'd have been too young to properly train. Luke disappears, the First Order rises, and suddenly a Skywalker-adjacent family becomes public enemy number one. It makes total sense that they would vanish from the galaxy, stay off the grid, and just hope that no one ever connects the dots. But what if this movie is about those dots finally being connected?
The most unfindable place in the galaxy for no reason at all.
What happens if the secret Skywalker line doesn't want to stay hidden anymore? Now, even if the Mara Jade Skywalker angle doesn't end up happening, the core stays the same. I think this boy is still being escorted to the Jedi. The mission isn't just keep him alive, it's get him to the people who can actually teach him what he is. And that opens up all kinds of possibilities for where the Jedi are at this point. Has Rey already started rebuilding the Order? Is she quietly pulling surviving Jedi and Force sensitives together in the background? Or are we catching her right at the beginning?
I will earn your brother's saber. One day.
And that part to me is where the legacy character tease actually comes in. Gosling finally delivers the kid to their destination, the doors open, and we're greeted by a familiar presence from the saga before. Is it Rey taking on her first real apprentice, or is it another surviving Jedi we didn't expect to see again? And if this boy really is tied to the Skywalker name, what does that do to Rey's own legacy and the future of the Jedi going forward? The exciting and also slightly terrifying part is this isn't just a road trip with blasters. It could be the moment that the Jedi Order finally restarts for real. But where there's light, there's also usually a shadow too. So yeah, whichever way Starfighter ends up going, the thing that really has me excited is how clearly it's been set up as a proper big screen event. This isn't just another Star Wars project, this is Star Wars returning to the big screen with a new story, a new point in the timeline, and characters we don't already know inside and out. But it still feels like it's trying to honour the vibe and the mythic side of what came before.
Then I am a Jedi. Not yet.
It's got that Force Awakens energy in the sense that it wants to feel big, crowd-pleasing and emotional. But instead of obsessing over the past, it feels like we're finally being nudged to ask, okay, what comes next for this galaxy? And you add Shawn Levy into the mix, coming hot off the buzz of Stranger Things, which, let's be honest, overlaps massively with the Star Wars fanbase, and it just gives the whole thing a bit of extra trust. We've seen what he can do with character-driven genre stories. We know he can juggle heart, spectacle, and humour, and his love of Star Wars already seems pretty genuine from how he talks about it. The real question for me is whether this ends up being the movie that quietly resets the tone for the next era of Star Wars on a big screen.
1,000 generations live in you now.
If it sticks to landing, we might look back on Starfighter as the moment everything properly shifted into whatever the future of this franchise is going to be. And that as a fan is a pretty nice feeling to have going in. But yeah, would you rather Starfighter reveal the kid as a secret Skywalker or keep him as a completely new character? As always, drop your thoughts, theories, and wildest speculations down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our latest one breaking down a massive update for the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, which is now live on the channel. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one, and may the Force be with you.